On January 13th, 2006, specifically in the city of Acasco, in the Argentine capital, Buenos Aires, an armed robbery occurred at the largest bank in Argentina. The gang entered the bank and took the employees hostage. After 15 minutes, they felt that they had made a mistake and had to escape immediately. One of the gang members left with a hostage, only to be surprised by a large number of police officers surrounding the place. He had no solution but to return to the bank and wait for his arrest. Dear viewer, never believe the gangs in their movements because everything was carefully planned. Like the movie La Casa de Babel, the professor was planning everything, big and small, and was always one step ahead of the police. And this is what happened in our story today. The leader was conducting the largest, smartest, and most successful robbery in history, the operation that was called the robbery of the century. Dear viewer, if this is the first time you are watching my channel, I invite you to subscribe and activate the notification bell to receive all new updates about true stories. Our story began on May 15th, 2005. On this day, Fernando went to his psychiatrist and told him that he wanted to do something that would restore his vitality and passion for life. The doctor asked him, "What do you want?" To do it, he said to him, "I am now 43 years old, and perhaps the thing that will restore my youth is that I rob a bank." Of course, the doctor laughed and told him that this thing is impossible to happen. Fernando replied, "This is not impossible, and I have been planning this work for some time." Of course, the discussion took place between them. It was very long. The thing you must believe, dear viewer, is that Fernando was honest. And his psychiatrist did not pay attention to him and did not believe him, and he saw him as a person who hated life. The distinctive thing about Fernando was his great intelligence. He worked as a transactions adjuster, and at the same time he was a theatrical actor. When Fernando decided robbing a bank, he left everything and devoted himself to planning. At first, he always went out on his motorcycle and cycled through the streets of the Argentine city of Acasco. The bank that caught his attention the most was Banco Rio. This bank was very large and famous in Argentina. 80% of Argentines were putting their money into it. In this bank, the bank provided an additional advantage to customers, which were deposit lockers, in which you could place all the valuables, gold, silver, diamonds, money, anything you wanted. Here, Fernando moved to the second step, which was determining the best way to rob this bank. He had two options. The first option is to carry out an armed attack and enter to steal the employees' funds. Of course, this method has a very weak return. Now, the largest possible amount he can find in the employees' funds does not exceed $15,000. Here I conclude that the risk ratio is greater than the return. The second option is to enter. He goes to the bank at night, reaches the safe deposit box, and steals everything from it. Of course, this method has very high returns, and it is certainly the goal of any thief in this world. But how can he reach the safe with this simplicity? Suppose he was able to dig a tunnel and was able to reach the safe. It will be detected through surveillance cameras that fill the place and are directly connected to the city police. In addition to the thermal sensors spread throughout the safe, this means that this assumption is impossible. But despite all this, the man did not give up and began thinking. In a way that would make him enter the bank smoothly and steal the safe without being detected, the first thing he thought of was to rent a house or a warehouse near the bank and dig a tunnel under the bank that would connect him to the safe, which would allow him to steal everything and then come back out of the same tunnel. But after he thought again, he found that it was impossible. Digging this tunnel requires time and equipment, and this is what will expose you. On the other hand, he is forced to dig a 220-meter-long tunnel, which will cost him a lot of money. This means that this story is impossible. So what is the solution? The solution appeared by chance. Fernando was with a real estate broker who wanted to see an apartment close to the bank. He rode his motorcycle and went to see the house. On the way, he noticed that there were a large number of sewer covers spread out on the road leading to the bank. He learned that there were only 10 meters between each cover. The meaning of this is that the sewage channels pass right next to the bank, meaning that instead of digging a tunnel, he can enter the bank through the sewers. When he completed the road and passed all the sewer openings, he was surprised that there were sewage channels. It ends with a large, square-shaped opening, more than 2.5 meters high. Under the hatch, there is a large water outlet, meaning there is no need to search for a property or dig a tunnel, as the tunnel already exists. All he has to do is enter the sewers and see how far the safe is from the sewer channel. He also noticed that the large sewer opening is only 160 meters from the bank, meaning that it is a walk. For only about 2 minutes, he made it under the bank. After that, he entered the tunnel and examined the place well, then returned home. After 25 days of planning, his plan was ready. The next step was to get a team to help him implement the plan, as he alone cannot implement it. And among the people candidates to join this heist are his friend Sebastian Polster, who works as an electronic and mechanical engineer, someone who is far from stealing and carrying out operations like this, until, according to Fernando's point of view, this matter is very good because he does not want to be his first partner in this theft. A criminal, in addition to the fact that Sebastian is distinguished by his great hatred for banks, especially Bancorio in particular. The reason is that his father and his family lost all their property when the largest bank in Argentina went bankrupt, and when they collected their money again and put it in the Bancario bank, the bank seized their money. And they sold their house because they failed to pay the land installments, meaning that from the latter, this person had an irreplaceable opportunity to take revenge on the bank that deprived him of his money. And the first thing Fernando and Sebastian agreed on was to change their names. They used nicknames and started calling each other by them, so Fernando became his name, the commander, and Sebastian's name is the engineer. Remember these names, as everything that comes after them will have titles. The commander and the engineer went to the bank site and entered the sewage channels. They studied their area and how far it was from the bank. They worked on this topic for a week, and then the engineer went to bank. He told them that he had 6 kilos of gold and wanted to store it with them. So the employee took him to the safe and made him see it as he showed him the safe deposit boxes and asked him to open one of the safes for him to verify the degree of security in it. Of course, everything he did was filmed through a small camera that was hidden in his clothes. Of course, after this visit, the engineer returned and watched the videos with the leader, and they began planning how to overcome these obstacles. The first problem they faced was that they needed major financial support. They wanted to buy equipment to open the large safe and all the safes inside it, and here the leader contacted the person. The third in the gang, nicknamed the Doctor, whose identity no one knows, is an educated person who has a social status, but at the same time he knows many criminals. He also has a lot of suspicious actions, so he took on the task of forming the team, and he played a role in gathering the members, who had an effective role in the gang. The first person was named Beto Latour. His title was the financier, and he was very intelligent, a trick player, and he was able to rob anyone without realizing it. He had a great ability to negotiate and persuade, and his criminal record was extensive. He had great experience with weapons. When the commander told him about the plan, he immediately agreed and told him that he owned a truck that he would sell and finance. With the process, 2 people remain, and the gang is complete. The first is responsible for the excavation work, and the second drives the car in which they will escape. The doctor suggested the name of Luis Silanes. He was a member of the most famous gang in Argentina. He spent more than 15 years in prison after being arrested 9 times. He is a promoter, a former contraband dealer, an accomplished thief, and an accomplished actor. He was taken to the hospital more than once after he pretended to be dying. He says that he was doing this in order to change the atmosphere, and they called him the Violent One. The last person in the gang is unidentified, and they called him the Boy. And here the gang is complete. The leader, the engineer, the doctor, the financier, the violent man, and the boy. What is strange is that they all shared one characteristic, which was intelligence. The leader asked the gang for plans of the streets surrounding the bank. It is logical that this task is the doctor's task, and indeed the doctor banned street plans. But the violent one, he was able to bring the complete plan of the bank, and when the leader asked him how to bring it, he answered violently, "We pledged in the first place to keep our names and sources secret, so please everyone must adhere to the rules." Of course, the plan he brought was 100% correct, and they were able to determine the location of the safe. The plan was, they dig a tunnel and enter the safe. They steal and come out of the tunnel. The whole operation takes place at night. Of course, they lowered the drilling equipment into the sewers and began the digging process towards the safe. The distance was 30 meters. The expected time to complete the drilling tasks was 2 months, during which time the engineer, he is working on something completely different, which is how to get into the safe without the thermal sensors working. Of course, there was an effective solution, but it was very expensive, which was to design special suits that trap body heat, but it was very heavy, and they could barely move when wearing it, and here the commander intervened. He proposed a very genius idea, where he told them, "Why don't we enter the bank door and escape through the tunnel?" He explained the idea, and all the gang members were amazed by it, so they agreed to it immediately, but they disagreed on something, which was weapons. The leader refused to have weapons with them, first so that there would be no harm to anyone. A person inside the bank, because his goal in this robbery is to restore his passion and not to kill or intimidate people. The second reason is that if the operation fails and they have weapons, their rule will be doubled. But with the new update to the plan, they were required to possess weapons, and here the commander asked the financier to bring weapons for the team, but of a special type that does not occur to the mind. Dear viewer, you will know its type at the end of the video, and here the financier brought exactly the weapons that I requested from him, and here we have reached the final stage, which is the way to escape from the bank. Like we said in the beginning, they will escape through the tunnel and exiting through one of the sewer openings on the road. Everyone opposed him, but he told them the second part and said to them, after they finish loading the spoils and entering the sewers, 2 boats will be waiting for them, and they will take them out in the opposite direction of the sewer channels to a point 200 meters away. From the bank, this hole will have a small freight car parked above it. This car will have an opening at the bottom in order to enter it through the sewer hole. Of course, person 6, nicknamed the Boy, is the one who will be waiting for them and transporting them after the mission is completed. And of course, they brought the car, and it was modified in the financier's house, and everything was happening in front of the financier's wife. And of course, he told them that she was trustworthy, and it was impossible for her to say anything. Also, the engineer invented a new thing called the compressor, and its mission was to break the locks of small tanks. Of course, the device was 100% successful, and it broke the locks within 7 seconds. Only, and now the time has come. On January 13th, 2006, a car stopped in front of the bank, and 4 masked people with yellow hair got out. They were the leader, the doctor, the violent man, and the financier. As for the engineer, he was inside the sewers and kept walking until he reached the wall of the vault. Of course, he brought equipment with him in order to break the bank. The wall, the 4 masked men entered the bank, took control of it, and held everyone hostage. Their actions and movements made everyone think that they were very dangerous, and at the same time, they gave the impression to everyone that they were afraid that the operation would fail. After 15 minutes, the police surrounded the place, and the financier took a hostage and took her out. Outside, he said to the police that he wanted to escape from the bank and go to their car that was outside, and he was shocked by the police and returned to the bank in fear, and they began to act as if the plan had failed and that they were looking for any way to escape through the main door. And there was someone. The one causing trouble for the gang was the employee in charge of the surveillance camera. He was informing the police about the gang's movements. Here the leader agreed with the violent man that they would force the guard to leave the room in exchange for releasing him. Indeed, the leader took the employee's phone and told him to tell the police that the gang wanted to talk to you. The employee went out with a hostage and told the police the story. They said that they were afraid and wanted to get out at any cost while saving their lives. Meanwhile, the commander and the violent man went and also gave a signal to the engineer to penetrate the wall of the safe. Before that, the guard was watching the cameras, and in case, he discovered that someone had penetrated the wall. He was going to inform the police, but the commander had planned everything, as we said before. When the employee left, everything became smooth. They entered the safe and began opening the locks and filling the bags with money. The doctor and the financier remained guarding the hostages, watching the police, and making money. After more time, the violent man came out and gave the signal to the police to call, and the police chief called the gang. The violent man told him that they had entered the bank only to steal, not to harm people, and a great conversation took place between them. The police chief asked him, "Do you have a history?" And he replied, "He got out of prison just a few days ago, and returning to prison is a normal thing for him." He also told him that I will consult with my friends. He gave us only an hour, so the police chief agreed. During this violent hour, he went to the commander and inquired if things were going as planned. Was shocked that they rose, he collected a third of the safe and flew out of joy and said to them, "How much time do you need?" The commander told him, "We will be ready in an hour." After the hour had passed, he called the police chief again and told him that they were very sorry for their action and told him that they were looking for a safe way to surrender themselves. And tell them, too, they were hungry and wanted to eat pizza with the detainees and then go out with the hostages. He told him, "If you do not fulfill this request, we will end the lives of the hostages and our lives as well." Of course, the police chief agreed. He wanted to relieve responsibility from his shoulders. And since he agreed, he gave the gang additional time to escape. Here the engineer came out and told his friends that they had completed the operation. The violent man asked the hostages to lie on the ground and not move, and that anyone who moved would die. They placed a time bomb in the door of the safe and a piece of cloth. They put the weapons on it and quietly withdrew into the sewers with all the spoils. They moved in the boats that they had prepared before until they reached the opening of the sewers, where the boy was waiting for them in the open car. They entered the spoils, and they also got on board and went to the financier's house. Get in the car. They entered the garage and entered the house and turned on the television in order to find out what happened. The surprise was that the police were still outside waiting and did not storm the bank. After 2 hours of escaping, the police chief decided to storm the bank and was surprised that the gang had disappeared. The funny thing is that the police chief stormed the bank after. He called the phone that was with the violent man 33 times. The gang won and the plan was 100% successful. They divided the money between them and each went his own way. Their agreement was that they would never meet each other for any reason. In the meantime, the police were solving a problem, the bomb. The surprise was that the bomb was a toy, and the weapons that the gang used were also plastic weapons, meaning they were toys. Everyone returned to their normal lives except the financier. He had a small problem, which was that one day his wife got up. By taking a sum of money without his knowledge, a quarrel broke out between them, and she threatened him that she would report it if he kept yelling at her. At that time, he remained silent and left the house, taking all the remaining money with him. When he returned home, he found his wife waiting for him, and another quarrel broke out between them because he had taken money from the house. The next day, the financier's wife went to the police and told them everything. The financier was arrested, then the leader, then the engineer, and then the violent man. As for the doctor and the boy, the police were unable to reach them because they had traveled outside the country. To this day, there is no information about them. The amount was stolen, and the gang did not return any dollars. The bank is the one affected by this story. All the agents were compensated. The gang was sentenced to varying sentences ranging from 9 to 15 years. However, they only served 3 years because their popularity became great among the people. Everyone was. He demanded that they be released from prison, and a large number of lawyers defended them, and in the end, they were released from prison. Then a film was created about their story, and the film received great media attention. They allocated 30% of the film's profits to the bank as an apology, so that their story could be recorded. It is the smartest theft that happened in the history of humanity, and it was called the theft of the century. Dear viewer, if you have reached this point with me, then subscribe to my channel and activate the notification bell to receive all new updates, and do not forget to give your opinion about the story.